That's rude.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy Juice Jones from Get Home Safe here with another episode of Mental Health Monday. My friend Jenna, what up?
What up?
Hey, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
When it comes to suicidal ideations, especially someone like you that's actually reached out to me back in the day, I want people to see, hey, there's another side to what happens after I get what is considered better. What happens to me when I move on with life? What is the feeling of that? What's the work on the other side of, okay, the emergency is no longer here? Because like a lot of folks are like, and this is a mistake I don't want folks to repeat. A lot of people think the person has a suicidal ideation. Sometimes it could bloom into actual actions. And I think that's really important to understand that, like, suicidal ideation means I'm struggling with the thoughts of suicide, but I'm not really trying to commit. But man, these thoughts are, the voices are getting louder, right? All right, so when the voices are no longer loud, what does life for that person look like? What do relationships look like? Because right now I've been telling a lot of folks, especially people that have either been tuning into what I'm doing on this side or come into the speaking engagements, we have a responsibility to sit down with the people that are going through the thing, whether it's anxiety, depression, ADHD, and how negative that can be in suicidal ideations, and ask, how would you like to be spoken to? How would you like to be handled when an emergency happens? What do we need to keep in mind when it comes to you, when it comes to spiraling? Because like everyone thinks I'm making the right decision, and it's like there's the education on what you need to do from the person that comes from like a therapist or hospitals, which hospitals give out terrible info, but we'll have that talk for another day, right? But you should keep in mind that you do need to ask the person who's going through the thing, hey, when this happens, how would you like us to approach you? What would you like us to keep in mind? And I don't see anybody making space for that conversation. Like, it's very much go to therapy, it's very much wellness, it's very much, well, in emergencies, call 911. But outside of these three things that people are naming, the most amount of time spent is going to be when the emergency is not happening in life. Like when you go to therapy, if you go to therapy, let's say 4 times a week, you're talking about 4 hours out of 30 days. If you go to therapy twice a month, you're talking about 2 hours out of 30, maybe 31 days. That means you're going to have 31 days of 24 hours that are left, and 2 days that are 23 hours where the person has to spend time with themselves, the person has to have a better environment to heal or to progress, and the person needs to have the right people who understand what they may need. And I'm like, where's the conversation about that, guys? Like, oh, flowers, sunlight, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that is true. But like, right now, a lot of folks are realizing, oh, the people are the environment, not just the room. A lot of folks are realizing, all right, so if financially the person can't be taken care of and they can't afford therapy, what does that lifestyle maybe look like if we try to keep it positive? And I'm like, all right, this is a start, but I don't hear no more conversations. And I'm like, nah, I'm just going to have the convo. I'm not going to wait for people to do it correctly. I'll do it myself. Yeah.
Nice. I'm excited to have that conversation because I have a lot to say. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and then you know, just be as honest as you'd like to be, either about your situation or what you've noticed across the spectrum of people that are dealing with similar situations. Because like, suicidal ideation is one thing, but there's like every one situation there's a common factor. Like, did you watch that movie Smile?
Yeah, I did.
I was so pissed. I watched it last night. I was pissed the entire movie because I was like, the main character, the issue I had with the main character was her inability to admit to people when shit was going south. I was pissed off at how much she was, I can fix this by myself. never having the proper tools or the state of mind. I was pissed at her calling out her fiance, who was the only black guy in the whole movie, because most of the movie was dominated by white people, right? And she was like, how could you betray me? And it's like, this man asked you if you were okay 7 to 8 times through the whole movie, and it became betrayal when he did the right thing. And I was just like, I'm not gonna watch this movie that's painting this white woman as a heroine that's doing all the bad things. No, she not only was she doing everything wrong, it was going downhill more and more. And then when she turned to her ex-boyfriend, who's the dude that was most useful to her, I was like, black boy, if you don't get the fuck out this movie and run away. I was like, oh my God. And usually I'm not that kind of person, but for that, I don't like when movies paint characters as this person that's trying their best. And it's like, I had zero likability for that woman's character for the whole movie.
I almost wonder if that was the point, because she did fail, like at the end. Like she did suffer.
Like, is that what it looks like when you don't ask for help? Like, remember, she was really piecing things together. And even when she was piecing things together, she never let the people the person who was a cop, the person who actually was in the medical field, because she had a terrible boss. Her boss sucked. Her boss didn't do anything until he saw the knife on the passenger side seat. And they were working her for 80 hours a week. He said, you've been working 80 hours a week for months. And I was like, wait, so the 80-hour for week, her working 80 hours a week for months wasn't the issue, but now that a patient has died in front of her and she may lose a worker, now she should take a week off? I was like, no, there's a big issue here. But that's a reality for a lot of people in the medical field. That's a reality for a lot of people when it comes to medicine and stuff. And I'm just like, this movie might be getting it right. When it comes to the description and the painting and stuff, especially when they found the dead cat in that boy's present. And her sister immediately said, how dare you do that to us? And it's like, my G, that's your only piece of family that's left. I don't really think that was an on-purpose thing. And then, like, I was like, so no one's going to step forward to help her? No one's going to try and grab her up before she falls on the table? Everyone's just going to be staring at her in fear, which means this fear has been in the room for a long time? And I was like, nah, when shit hits the fan with folks going through a psychological breakdown or something else like that, that's probably how the room looks. And I was like, oh God. So I'm not going to introduce you. We're just going to get right into the talk. All right. So, well, I guess you should introduce yourself. This is your personal camera right here to let folks know who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. So we're recording now?
Oh, yeah. No. Everything's just been running during this whole wild-ass rant of mine.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Jenna Camille. I'm a producer and songwriter and musician. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy you back. I'm happy you back. I remember how raw that first convo was.
Oh my God, that was just a raw ass time. It's funny, I look back at that video, I was like, I look so like drained. I looked so drained. I was so over it.
And now you look like you got a bunch of color. You look like you've been staying outside, tanning for a little bit, doing some picnics, enjoying life and whatnot. So you're a survivor, right? Of suicidal ideations. Is that correct to say you're a survivor of suicidal ideations, or how is that worded? What's the correct language for that?
I think that's a fair description, because I have attempted suicide multiple times and I have survived. So I think it's fair to say I'm a survivor of suicidal ideation.
When it comes to the language of how suicide is painted in media, what is the significance of this person died by suicide versus this person committed suicide?
I feel like there's still a disconnect, not just on the part of the media, but on the part of the society, when it comes to recognizing suicide or suicidal ideation as like a symptom of an illness. And I say that in air quotes because I was, just talking, can't remember who I was talking to. Recently, I was talking to someone recently and explaining, it was like, how fair is it to call it an illness when a lot of the times we're responding to external issues. It's not to say that we don't have internal things that we are dealing with, and our internal things may influence how we process our external things. But as I've reflected on the sources of my depression, a lot of it has to do with my feeling of not being able to adapt to my environment.
Okay. Tell me more.
Just like feeling kind of like, like I don't fit in socially, being in environments that seem to favor people who are more outward, who are more social, the social butterfly thing. It's only like more recent times where we've started to really give space for the idea of introversion versus extroversion, and allowing those things to both be valid in some way. But growing up, that wasn't necessarily the case. Like if you're a quiet person, there's some, and even still that still persists, like watch out for the quiet person, they're the serial killers, or they're the this. It's like, so those feelings are just feeling kind of alienated, and like just based off the way that I looked, just I don't know, just feeling often that I wasn't producing the expectations, or meeting the expectations of my environment. Kind of like caused me, I feel, maybe to maladapt to my environment. So like when we talk about died by suicide, or died from suicide, or committed suicide, I kind of like, I feel like it's too complex of a situation to really kind of relegate it in that way. Like I think it's more fair to say died from suicide, because there are a lot of things that contribute to that, that ideation, the development of that ideation. I don't think it's fair to just like, leave it to like this act in which this person performed that was harmful to themselves and to other people. Like I think there's a social responsibility that we need to acknowledge when people commit suicide as
a community.
Yeah.
I did an interview with a young man who he struggles with, I don't want to say suicidal ideation for his situation, but I know it's extreme depression and anxiety. And we were talking about how ADHD tied into that. And his description of, there's an empty void that you feel before the other things set in, before sadness, depression, and sometimes anxiety. And he said the void itself would be the tree, if I'm not mistaken. The depression are the leaves on the tree, and it's the atmosphere that's around you. And he was like, when you get to the void, what happens is all of a sudden you just have this heavy amount of sadness that hits you at one time, and then the depression blooms. For you, would you say it was similar to that, or could you kind of see things coming up on the horizon and you felt it before it set in?
I think it is similar to that. I would say I would describe it that way now, because my depression, I've been able to get to a point with my relationship to depression. I don't even want to call it my depression, because I don't even want to own it as something that I have to have or have to keep. But my relationship to depression has now become more like off and on. It kind of sprouts and then resolves, where before it was a constant state of being. So prior to now, I would say it was more of, I would say I was born predisposed to depression. I would think that I would say that would be most accurate, because I was feeling feelings of alienation, sadness, and apathy, and all those things that we, correspond or the identifiers of depression. I would say I was feeling them very early on in my childhood, and then growing into my teens. It wasn't until I was 18 when I was the actions that I was taking were starting to be recognized as suicidal, where I was finally diagnosed with depression. But I was taking all sorts of different self-harming actions throughout my childhood, from my primary years up until my teen years. So,
do you remember what those actions were? Like, do you remember the order in which they were happening, and how you could see that, damn, that was leading to like worse actions?
Yeah, I think it started with just like self-image, like looking at myself. I remember when I was younger, I would look at my thighs a lot, and didn't like that my thighs seemed to spread when I sat down, which it's normal. But like back then, I thought that meant I was a little fat or chubby, or something off with me. And so that was one thing. I didn't like, and I understand that colorism in our community is a very complex issue, and I understand that there is some sensitivities when it comes to like conversations around privilege and like privilege of light-skinned Black people versus kind of the hardship of darker skin. So I understand that. So this is not, I'm not saying this to not acknowledge that, because I do recognize that. But I was the lightest person in my family. So that was often made apparent to me. I would
joke statements.
Yeah, jokes, and it was like yellow girl. Just kind of like I was called white girl.
Were you that light?
I didn't think so. I mean, I haven't gotten any this about the same complexion I've always been. But I was, and it wasn't that I've never, and this is why I'm really careful to acknowledge the nuances, because I've never felt like ugly for being light skinned, because I understand that society has kind of like treated lighter complexions as something that is like favorable. But I have felt alienated because of it. Feeling like, I don't belong. This is not where I'm supposed to be. I stand out too much. It's too obvious that I'm different.
I just want to fit in, and I can't seem to get that one thing right.
So that was a thing that I recognized when I was younger. It was a big thing. And then I started to, and this is a little touchy for me because I don't really talk about this much. I started to develop like some sort of like sexual things, like when I was like around 6 or 7, and I attribute it to an incident that I faintly remember. It's like, when you get older, you have like these images of things that you remember, but because it's so long ago, you're not even sure if it really happened or not. So I have this memory that kind of stays with me and has traveled with me, of me going to Atlanta to visit some cousins, and there were some younger cousins my age or a little bit older than me that were that I was hanging with in a basement, and it was getting towards the end of the night, and I remember pretending to be asleep. And I remember as I was pretending to be asleep, my cousins were taking turns kissing me. And and then I remember another image I remember is maybe around the next day coming upstairs and being told, don't let nobody do that to you. And now I've never talked to my parents about this to validate this. I've never talked to my cousins to validate this, but for some reason that is an image that has traveled with me throughout my teen years. I mean, I remembered it when I was a teenager. I remember talking about it, and I had a moment in high school where I would just be talking about like stuff. And I would like create these stories like, oh, I saw my cousins that did this to me. Like when I was, and I hadn't seen them since I was like probably like 6 or 7. But I would just start creating these stories because I feel like that was my way of trying to process what I thought I was remembering that I didn't understand. So those were like the earlier things that I felt were, I kind of was like entrapped with, that kind of formulated into this void that you're talking about, that ultimately, you know, grew and expanded and became something kind of more intense.
When it comes to memories like that, do you ever wonder what would happen if you had the conversation or what that would change?
Yeah, you know, I've gotten at a point now where I've started having conversations with my relatives. I had a conversation with my grandmother recently about, you know, my grandfather. My grandfather has the history, the story of my grandfather is very kind of murky, and it's one of those things where it's like people have like sensitive feelings about him, and I finally got to start asking a little bit more about what is that about. So just certain things that I've, you know, trends in our family, you know, that have kind of followed around, that I've finally started to feel more comfortable opening those doors. And I think it has been healing in a way, because it has given me perspective that allows me to make, you know, to form a more informed opinion about my experiences that kind of relieve me of some of the, if I have guilt or something like that, relieve me of some of that, because I'm able to really fully understand exactly what it is and treat it that way. And like instead of trying to deal with something that I'm not sure about, I can deal with something that I know is real and really kind of like attack it in the right way, I guess, you know?
Yeah. All right. So now that you've had the steps, you've done the memory, you've looked at things, because we realize sometimes the past does affect who we are. Have you ever had sit downs with family members or those close to you to be like, hey, if you ever see me spiraling or things are hitting the fan, here's like a list of words or sentence structures you could use to approach me, because like that lets me know if you're talking to me like this, maybe I am a little bit over the edge and I need to reel it in or figure things out.
No, I actually haven't, but I'm glad that you said that, because that does, I think one of my issues with communicating has been that I've always had a fear that I'm not communicating correctly. And so when I communicate, I don't get the response that I'm hoping to get. And which makes me feel like, okay, maybe there's something about the way that I'm communicating this that is, you know, not working. So me being an extreme person, I go back to the furthest extreme of not communicating at all. And I think that a large part of our problem as a society is that we don't know that there are ways that we could communicate things that are still true and honest. We can say how we really feel, but it's like, for example, it's kind of funny, but I was with my partner and we were, being affectionate with each other. And she said, Jenna, I'm saying this with love. Like, girl, your breath stink. And she's saying it, but it's like, it was funny, but it was like, I didn't like shudder because it's like, it's the way that she's saying it. Or just like when we have disagreements, you know what I'm saying? Like, we'll have these feelings like, okay, we're bothered by something and those feelings are real, but the way we communicate it to each other allows us to receive what's being said versus build up a wall between ourselves and the other person because of the way that it's being said. So I think that especially in the Black community, we struggle with that so hard because even to get to the point of like, okay, let's try it a different way, it's difficult because Black people are so resistant to giving up, old ways of doing things. It's like, oh, I was raised this way. Oh, my mom whipped my ass, and it's like they're resistant to that because they feel like, I feel like when people are, I don't want to use the word indoctrinated, but that's the only word that I feel fits. When people are indoctrinated into a way of being, whether it's socially, religiously, or whatever, it becomes everything to you because it is like, it's so rooted in you.
It's your approach, it's how you handle things, it's how you digest things, it's the lens that you see the world through.
But also it defines your relationships with people. If I accept that the way that my parents raised me was maladaptive, wrong, or I have to deal with my pain, and I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with the pain of knowing that my parents were wrong. So I'm just going to accept that they were right because it keeps me from having to challenge everything that I believe about my life and really deconstruct myself and really start over. And I feel like, I'm not speaking for any other community because I'm learning to not speak about what I don't know. So I'm going to speak for our community. In my experience, is like, I feel like we are so resistant to saying, okay, wait a minute, there is another way. Let's try it. Let's talk about it a different way. Let's maybe communicating our feelings actually isn't the worst thing that could happen. Maybe we end up actually getting what we want by saying how we truly feel.
Or sometimes maybe some of you and my own folk want to just be right instead of being understanding, and not every situation dictates you have to be right. When it comes to the word maladaptive, what does that word mean?
I guess for me, I guess it just means that it is in conflict with who we are and what we need as people. It is destructive. It doesn't produce good fruit. It's sour. It's rotten. It destroys. It infestates. That's maladaption to me. So for me, that contradicts like everything that we say that we want to be. Everybody wants to talk about, unless you're like really just like somebody who enjoys the suffering of others, and it's just,
and there are people like that out there.
Absolutely. And it's just
like that out there.
And just totally committed to being just nasty because you get pleasure from it. I think the majority of people want to believe that they're good people, do things because they think it's the right thing to do, it's moral. I mean, you hear all these, people that are like, charging against abortion because they feel like it's moral, and we're killing a fetus, or charging against gay marriage because they think it's moral and the sanctity, blah, blah, blah. They're driven by this idea of what is good. And because of that, it's like they are aligned so strongly that they can't see that it is in conflict with like other people's lives, that it actually destroys people's lives.
Yeah.
Because they are so committed to this sense of morality. For me, like, if something is truly moral, it should benefit more than one group.
Yeah.
It should ultimately benefit everybody if it's truly moral. If it's only benefiting one person or one group or one family or whatever, like, that doesn't make any sense, because morality is about how we interact and how we harmonize with our environment and with everybody around it. That's the whole point of morality, is to be able to have a functional environment with ourselves and other people that produces joy, pleasure, happiness, satisfaction. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, like, if it's not doing that, you know, for me, that's maladaptive. Like, that's not, you're not adapting in harmony with the rest of the environment.
Okay.
You are in conflict with it.
Yeah.
So.
And that means that every step you take is maladaptive. So you're always looking to destroy, not to build.
Yeah.
What's it like accepting love as someone who's survived?
Accepting love as someone who survived. It is,
Take your time.
It's so complicated because, you know, again, when I talk about committing to ideals, sometimes the religions that we have are religions of hatred towards ourselves. And I realize that my religion has been a hatred towards myself.
Yeah.
And so it is hard to break that indoctrination. So when I receive an abundance of love, it's uncomfortable. And like we were talking about in the last interview, I was talking about how it's uncomfortable for me to express positive feelings. That's in large part due to my indoctrination of hatred towards myself. I can't express positive feelings towards myself, and therefore I'm projecting that that process onto other people. So it really takes a lot of work to reframe that. One thing that me and my partner do, because we both struggle with that sometimes, is like, if one of us says something negative, or like, say I give her a compliment and she's like, I don't, like, I'll tickle her, and then she'll be like, okay, yes, and then just to like get into the practice of saying something nice to the point where it's like it becomes a reflex to say something nice
and also accept it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a muscle that needs to be trained when it hasn't been trained so much? Because like, as a survivor, half the time you're just happy, like, well, you know, I made it. But then after that, like, you do have to find, what does joy look and feel like for someone that didn't want to be here anymore? What does anger look like for someone who didn't want to be here anymore? And who are the people that I need around me? So like, how have you gone about picking and choosing who your friends are in this time as you've rebuilt yourself?
There's a lot of answers within that question.
Take your time.
So, in terms of like training, so for one, as a music teacher, one of the things I tell my students is that if you break down learning, you can break it down in a few parts.
Okay.
One is the commitment to learning. One is the practice. Oops.
It's all good.
I have set reminders for everything.
You're good. Your light's on.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
So, and with the practice, you break down the practice. A lot of the practice is, you know, basically, it's like part of it is understanding what you're practicing. The other part is just the movement, the physical memory. So like, one thing I'll say is like, okay, if we're practicing something, practice the movement. Focus on the movement. Focus on how your hands are moving. Because the more that you get used to the movement, even if you don't understand what you're doing, your muscles will remember the shape, remember how to find it, remember to play it, and you can move forward through that. So like sometimes, like people say fake it till you make it, I kind of agree with that. It might not be responsible mantra in all situations, but sometimes rehearsing, like we're saying, rehearsing something becomes so, and it makes it become so ingrained that it's just becomes second nature to do so. And then so it's like once you make that shift, you start to recognize with the people around you where there's conflict. You know, it's like, okay, I am at this point now. This is how I'm functioning. And then you'll recognize with your friends or whoever is around you that they're operating on a different space. And that doesn't mean that anybody is right or wrong. Like we all function differently. We all have different boundaries. We all have different things that, you know, we enjoy or we don't. And that doesn't make anybody bad. So like when people be like, oh, you know, I realized who's not my friend because when I changed, they, you know, I can't deal with those people anymore. And this is like almost we kind of treated like I got better and you stayed the same. When it's not like that. I just changed. I became a different person.
Or everybody's moving at a different pace.
Yeah, we're different at a different pace, and it's okay. And you might be changing. You might be growing. And the things that we might have bonded on at some point, we no longer bond on because those aren't things that are important to us anymore. You know, so in some situations, you know, that relationship just changes. In other situations, that relationship moves apart. And it doesn't have to be a situation where it's like, oh, I don't ever rarely do I ever see like friendships that move apart as losses. I just see it as the natural course of movement as we grow up. Sometimes we lose touch. Sometimes people's lives become totally different. People get families. People go through all types of certain things in their lives, and their lives become just something so distant from what is ours. Foreign, yeah. And you know, it's almost like we've kind of moved into different worlds. So, you know, I think that's okay. I think it's okay. I think it's just, you know, I think ultimately what's important is our healing and, you know, our commitment to our healing and our understanding of ourselves, and we're going to have a tribe that, you know, is committed to the same things, and that's okay.
I tell folks that the best thing you can do in any relationship, because generally we make this mistake of only mourning or being upset when we've lost a relationship in terms of who we're dating, but your friendships are just as important as who you're dating. That like when you look back at it, hold on to the good times, because like in every relationship there was a point where it's like, you know what, that was a good time, but also understand why things didn't work out and move forward with that. So be proud of what you were a part of, but don't feel guilty or don't feel enraged at what you no longer have access to. Because when it comes to your relationships, anger really comes from I no longer have access to that person or what that was anymore. And that's where the real frustration comes from people.
Yeah, you know, for me, I think of it like this. Like I have a lot of people because of the way that I process my life. You know, and we talked about this in the last interview. I have a tendency to disappear. And so there are a lot of people that I love and care about that I don't talk to often. And so like that's why I'm like, I don't really see you know, those distances as losses, because if any one of them were to call me or reach out to me, like I would answer no question. Like I don't,
Yeah.
I don't, it's very rare that I completely sever ties with people, and they have to be very specific in fractions, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But for the most part, no, it's just this shit is hard, bro.
Yeah.
This life is hard, and it's stomping a lot of people out, and a lot of people are carrying a lot of pain, a lot of loss. I have friends that have just, lost their parents. I have friends that, have been going through severe trauma, and sometimes we get into the space where it's like, oh, I haven't heard from this person. They're not prioritizing me. But on the other end, like, if you knew what's happening, if you knew what was going on, you'd understand, like, it's never personal, It's just people are struggling. And I think the attitude could shift to like, okay, if I haven't heard from someone in a while, let me see how they're doing it. Let me check in and make sure that they're okay,
I think I kind of had that moment with a friend a couple of weeks ago. Been reaching out to this person for like years. When I say years, I'm talking about like maybe 6-7 years of, hey, what's good? How you been? Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Hey. And they finally opened up to me yesterday, and it was like I had to sit down with myself. I had like a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to do, and I stopped everything that I was doing for the day. And it was heavy because I think unfortunately, when you learn to be a private person, or you learn to be okay with something that's not okay, when you finally open up to your friends that have been asking forever, hey, how are you doing? And I'm just maintaining, like, how are you doing? There's a certain point that when they do finally open up, you kind of have to upgrade the person's profile. You have to sit with what they've either been going through in silence, or they've been keeping to themselves, and how not healthy that probably was for them. And then you also have to come to terms with, like, damn, that was probably really hard to have all that on your shoulders, and like try and find a positive outlook. As someone's friend, especially when it comes to their relationships or who they're trying to be, I don't owe anybody in this story loyalty. What I do owe you is friendship, an ear that's willing to listen, and also the capacity to not always have the answer, but still let you know that I'll create a space for you. So when it comes to like a lot of stuff that you've gone through and the people that you've met up to this point, have you had anybody that's made space for you coming out of the dark space you used to perpetually exist in, and say, hey, it's okay to sit at the picnic table and just enjoy the grass?
Yeah. Well, you have been one of those people.
I appreciate that.
I had to have some real conversations with some friends, because I had somehow, because of I would say partly because of my private, my tendency to be private, and my tendency to kind of keep my feelings to myself. Some people tend to see me as like the strong friend, and so they'll call me or talk to me about the stuff that they're going through, and meanwhile I'm like trying to process their stuff, but I'm trying to process my stuff. And because of that dynamic, it ended up resulting in me constantly having to process somebody else's stuff and never really having the opportunity to voice and communicate what's happening with me. And that ultimately built up a lot of resentment in me, and it made me want to shut down. It made me want to shut people out. I didn't want to help anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to take care of myself.
You ever saw that meme or that video with the little girl that says, fuck you, and she's like just chilling on the floor? It's easy to become that.
But I realized that part of that is because I wasn't taking responsibility for my feelings by privatizing my feelings. I wasn't owning them, and I wasn't claiming them. I wasn't claiming my own space. And so people were kind of coming in because they're claiming their space.
Yeah.
They're doing their due diligence, but I'm not doing mine.
If you don't put up boundaries, they'll take, because no one's claiming that.
Yeah. So I had to really kind of like step up and be like, look, this is what I need from you. You know, if we're gonna do this, this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
And you know, so I think that it's going to take all of us to be honest with ourselves about what we need, and being honest with each other about what we need in order to keep that balance, you know, flowing. You know, it's going to require us to do our own work. We can't rely on our friends to do the work for us. You know, our friends are not our therapists. And I had to learn that too. Like, you know, it's okay. Yes, reach out to your friends. That's what your social network is for.
Let them know what's up.
Let them know, communicate. But also on your end, recognize, okay, I have a problem here. It is my problem. What do I need to do to solve my problem? You know?
And then after that, you can delegate sharing the burden of your problem after figuring that out.
Yes.
Because, like, as a man, I know I always want to have the solution, but as a person, it's okay to just not have the solution and be someone who simply carries one of the buckets of water that someone has, so they can take a break and then go figure things out. So, let's take a 5-minute break so these cameras cool off.
You mentioning therapy though, it makes me. Have you interviewed like therapists?
I just did a sit down with one therapist, Miss Unique, who I've done a lot of work with her, and we just did another sit down because I was like, I need to make sure folks hear about Unique and the things that she be selling. She's a dope Black therapist from Chicago, by way of Chicago, that works out here in DC. I did another interview with this therapist, Jasmine. She's dope as hell. She also from North Carolina, did work in Chicago, now does work in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I think she's licensed for all 3 states. And I have like a couple other counselors and therapists that I'm looking to interview because, like, I want to start getting back to adding more of the professional voice to the work that I do. Like, because remember, you have Get Home Safe is broken down into 3 sections: therapy, wellness, community. So for you, you're on the community side because you're the real story of going through it. But for the therapist, like, I told them, like, you have one interview that's your introduction to folks, and then we have the other interview of really discussing what's going on in our community and what are we observing and why are these things happening in the way that they're happening. They don't have to happen that way, but they're happening in these ways. What can we do to make shit better? Because, like, let me tell you, shit is not only getting worse, but, like, the resources for things to be solutions are starting to go away too. And that's bad because, like, so for example, I have an issue with hospitals.
Oh man. Oh my God. You mean prisons?
That one struck a chord with you.
They're prisons.
And, like,
it's medication.
So even not even going that far, this young lady who I'm cool with, who's a nurse, told me how security isn't trained on how to deal with mental health patients. They just criticize and insult everyone. And for you as a mental health patient in a hospital, I think it's detrimental to say, I'm a hospital, but your security guards are insulting people that are having a mental health breakdown. From a society standard, if you don't see an issue with that, or don't break it down into they shouldn't have lost their mind. That's the dumbest thing. I tell people they dumb to their face for stuff like that, because it's like, it's not that simple. You're not choosing to be crazy. You're not choosing to lose your mind. So when the hospital chooses to have these cops and hired security that don't have the awareness to shut up and mind their business, or handle the situation correctly with empathy, they're there to protect the nurses, and that's necessary. But if they are helping the patient that is losing themselves deteriorate more, then you basically have a contradiction. You've hired a contradiction. And if there's no training to that, because cops know they're not going to be held liable for that kind of behavior, it makes you think, what else do these securities and cops do, knowing that, well, I'm not liable for that, so I can get away with it? Because it's not just that. That thought process bleeds into a lot of things. Well, who's going to check me? What they going to do about it? I'm hired. I got to keep everybody safe. What's the issue? And it's like, no, that's a big issue, because you can easily push someone over the edge who goes from, I'm simply a mental health problem, to I am now a mental health problem and I am a danger to people because you've pushed me to the edge. And I now need to express myself. And you and I know, when you've lost it mentally, you find different forms of expression to get your message across. The message doesn't have to make sense, but I know I was heard. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow, what a bar. What are your feelings on hospitals when it comes to mental health emergencies?
I just do not think that hospitals are, my experience, I'm just going to speak from my experience and the experience of some of my friends.
Yeah.
I don't think that they respond, they have the correct, like you were saying, they have the correct attitude. I don't even think it's just security. I think it's the whole, hospital doesn't have the correct attitude towards people with, mental illnesses. They treat, I was in the hospital, I felt like we were treated just slightly better than prisoners. Where it's there is some empathy in it, where it's okay, let's have a session, let's have a therapy session, let's have occupational therapy, where there's things where we can engage in that are, that are helpful to us. But it's just for one, the ground, let's just talk about the physical part of it. The grounds are so uncomfortable. Yeah. It's just
hospitals or McDonald's.
Yeah,
it's just get what you need and leave.
And the way that they place you, I had a crisis, and I went to Washington Hospital Center, and I was taken in the emergency room away from my partner, and my partner was waiting out in the waiting room. I was begging and pleading with them, please let her come, because they kept telling me that she could come. After they talked to me, saw what was going on, they kept telling me that she could come. And then they started coming, okay, let's go and take. Meanwhile, they're not telling me what is going to happen. They're not telling me that they're planning on keeping me or anything like that. It's just one person comes in, okay, we got a bag just for your belongings, just to put your belongings in. Okay. They're not telling me that they're going to take the belongings away from me, and that includes my phone. They're not telling me this. So I'm starting to panic, because they're getting ready to take my phone. They're not explaining to me why they're taking my phone, where they're taking my phone, and they're still not telling me whether or not she can come back. And so I'm starting to panic. I'm crying at this point. I'm talking to, there's an aide that comes in basically to babysit, to watch you until the nurses and doctors come in. And so I'm begging with this person. I was like, please, could you please tell me, or get someone to tell me if she can come back? And if she can't come back, I need somebody to tell her that. I need somebody to let her know what's going to happen, so that she's not out there by herself for 3-4 hours not knowing what the fuck is going on. Yeah. So all this is going on, nurses coming in. Again, people are telling me different things. Tell me the doctor's going to come in. The doctor came in and asked me what was going on. I told them that I was feeling depressed and I was feeling this. And the doctor said, well, it sounds like you have an illness that you're not treating, which is bullshit. How do you know that I'm not treating my illness? How do you know that? I haven't had a crisis like this in over 3 years. You come in and you see me in the hospital one time, and then you make an assumption that I'm not treating my illness.
We haven't had a full conversation.
No.
You don't have anything about my background, therapist that I've been sitting down with, the medication I may be taking, an assumption off of one conversation.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Didn't inquire that the fact that if I was seeing therapy, I was seeing my therapist faithfully. Faithfully.
Yeah.
So I was insulted by that.
Of course.
It was very judgmental, and it didn't seem at all concerned with what was actually going on. And so then I'm taken in a back room. The social worker comes in, and at this point they're trying to, they're planning on keeping me, but then they're asking me, then he finally asked me, do you think you need to be kept? And I tell them no. I have to wait a few hours before they talk to the doctor to assess. Finally in the morning, I'm allowed to go home. And that was more traumatic for me than the thing that brought me in the hospital in the first place.
And now you have this deep seed of distrust of, why would I trust people that are doing everything they can to not listen to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would, if I were ever to try to commit suicide again, I would try my best to be successful just so that I don't go to the hospital and have to stay there.
Yeah. Because moments like that, you're just like, why would anyone sit through that? You guys are supposed to help me, and if that's what help looks like, then how do I tell the next person you need to go to the hospital when that's been my experience? Especially as someone who is more relatable to someone who is having ideations, who's going through the process of, and I'm trying to stop them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's my gripe with hospitals. Everything is business, and it's treated as such. And they're gonna say, well, these are the policies we have, we followed the rules. And I'm starting to see less and less empathy in the space that's supposed to help people. Or they're so numb to the business of helping people, they're like, but look, I did help them, they didn't die. And it's like, that's not a good measure of helping. If anything, you've chosen how to make the bare minimum look like a lot when it's not. And that's what a lot of things have become now. So I'm sorry for your experience. That's fucked up. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with suicidal ideations, especially as someone that's come out on the other side of the tunnel?
A few things. One, I'm not going to say, yes, meditation, yes, and I roll my eyes very deliberately, with, go outside, and yes, those things can be helpful, but the problem is not that people can't or don't do that. The problem is the thoughts, the feelings. It's not the sunshine. It's not the meditation. It's helpful. It can help relax you. It could help give you a temporary sense of lightening of mood, but it doesn't solve the problem. It is just something, at best, it is something that can help to distract from the problem or to lessen the symptoms of the problem temporarily. So absolutely not. I'm not going to sit up here and say go outside and that's going to solve your problem. But I will say, just speaking on what has been helpful for me aside from therapy, because I know that therapy is very hard to access for a lot of people, and I'm very lucky to be able to have therapy. But outside of therapy, one of the things that has been most helpful for me is finding someone in my community that I can trust to communicate what is going on, and to allow myself the space to receive that support. The other thing that has been helpful for me is being able to identify what are the things, because sometimes there are things that can be identified. Sometimes it's not as easy to find them, but sometimes if you spend some time writing, just jot down, journaling how you feel, and then trying to see, okay, what are these feelings about? I'm feeling ugly. Why? Like, what is the ugliness about? Where do you identify that? Or I'm feeling alienated. What's that about? Or I'm feeling like I'm unsuccessful in my business. What's that about? And seeing try to identify areas that or resources that you do have access to, or solutions that you do have access to. Try to identify them things, because while therapy is difficult, there are resources that are free and accessible.
In DC.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that one thing that I've tried my best, and I'm saying tried my best to make it clear that I have not perfected the art of overcoming suicidal ideation. I still have it from time to time.
It's still a fight. It's like when someone realizes they're an alcoholic and you realize it's a fight that has to continue and you have to put effort towards.
One thing that has what was I lost my train of thought.
You said one thing that has helped in your fight against suicide.
I just drew a blank. Identifying resources, identifying
talking about jotting down notes and picking up on the habits.
Picking up notes, habits. Oh my gosh. I lost my thought.
I can see you reading the book with your eyes closed. Like, where's the book?
Where is it?
Where is it?
I guess commitment.
Okay.
Commitment.
Okay. So when you say commitment,
the commitment to, and this is where it can be tricky.
Okay.
Because some people have not. It's almost like you have to have the vision of what your life could look like on the other side to commit to getting there.
Yeah.
If you lose that vision, that's when it becomes very dangerous. Because I've lost the vision. That's when I was in my crisis state. That's crisis. Is when you lose the vision, when you lose the ability to see outside of what's happening. So for me, I've had to really commit even when I lost it. And I had to find a reason to do it even when I lost that vision. And for me, the only, really honestly, well, I won't say the only thing, because there are a lot of other things that keep me going, but the one main thing is that I don't want to quit. I'm committed to not quitting. I want to see it through to the end. I'm determined to see it through to the end. And because of that, when I lose the vision, this is what I wanted to say. I used to take a reactive approach to dealing with my depression and suicidal ideation, where it's like I get into the crux of it and I'm just responding emotionally to all of it. But now I try to take more of a proactive approach where I'm like defining when I'm in my best state, when I'm in the good state, when things have kind of come down, because that's when my brain is more clear, I'm able to process a little better. When I'm in my good states, I take advantage of my good states and I say, okay, what do I need to maintain this? What things do I need to have in place? And how do I get those things? If it's the job, do I hate my job? Do I need to quit this job? Do I need to communicate to my job that I need a break? Because I've had to do that. I've had to communicate to my job, like, look, I have to stop this. I have to stop. I need to take a break.
Yeah.
You know, is it a relationship with someone? Do I need to end this?
Yeah.
Do I need to, do I need to have a honest conversation with this person? Is it relationships with family? Do I need to have an honest conversation with my family members? Do I need to distance myself?
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be, a source of depression could be physical health stuff. Is it something going on with my health? Okay, well, I need to go see a doctor. If I can't see a doctor, because I know that's an issue, and what lifestyle changes can I make that could at least alleviate, or at least be some sort of attempt to alleviate some of these issues on my own? And that's really the best that we can do. Yeah. And again, it's hard when you have a society and a system that does not support people improving themselves. We favor barriers. We love barriers. I had it hard. I had to walk 20 miles to get to school. I had to walk in the snow. And they love it. Love it. Oh my God.
And what does that have to do with right now and what I'm going through?
It's just like so much of our society is so in love with struggle. Oh, I struggled. I was in poverty and I worked my way up into the rich, wealthy, lifestyle, and I get to buy this and that. Yeah. And it's just like, we don't have to make it so hard. Why does that have to be the story? Because it makes you feel pride that you survived and a bunch of other people didn't. Like, to me, it's just like wouldn't it make more sense that we just took away barriers so that people don't have to have these stories of struggle, of not being able to put food on the table, not being able to pay them rent, despite the fact that they're working 40 hours, 80 hours a week?
We gotta stop romanticizing struggle.
Yeah, and it's just like, as a musician, I abhor celebrity. I abhor the culture of celebrity because.
What does that mean, to not admire?
Well, not necessarily to not admire. I feel like the culture of celebrity is about achieving this status. And if you want to achieve this status, then you have to not sleep. You have to dedicate this amount of time. You have to you have to walk to Junior's from Manhattan for the cheesecake. It's like, we love that shit. And I guess it's because people that have achieved that feel like you have to prove yourself. You have to work hard to prove that you deserve it. But I'm like, that's deserve what? Yeah. Deserve to buy a big house that you have to pay a bunch of taxes on? Deserve to buy a bunch of cars? Deserve to basically work hard so that you can deserve to buy more shit? It doesn't mean anything about who you are as a person. It just means that you work hard so that you can deserve to have access to things that make your life good.
And you define what nice things are.
Yes. Or they define it, and we have to break our backs trying to achieve it. Yeah. We can't define it for ourselves. For me, I'll be perfectly happy being a musician and being a teacher. But the problem is, the society doesn't value being a teacher, doesn't value it enough to pay adequately. And then they raise these prices. So people that are in these professions, actors, teachers, some even doctors, can't survive without picking up other jobs, picking up other professions, Uber driver. I'm an Uber.
Breaking their backs also.
This is the time of jack of all trades. Everybody's a jack of all trades now. I'm a doctor. I'm a social media influencer. I'm an Uber driver. I am this. I am all these things at the same time. As a musician, I'm a promoter. I'm an A&R. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a road manager. Like, I'm all these things because our society has made it so impossible for you to exist as anything other than rich.
Yeah.
You can't be anything other than rich. And if you are anything other than rich, it's because it's a moral failure on your part.
Yeah.
So then what do? So then you have a mental health crisis because, again, going back to what I said earlier, is it my fault that I'm depressed? Or are we living in a depressive environment?
Yeah.
That just stomps the life out of people unless they can commit to this American dream that has now even changed the fucking the goalposts.
Oh yeah, I'm always moving the goalposts.
Yes,
always.
Before the American dream was just to work hard, be middle class, take care of your family, live in a nice suburb. Cool. It's not the American dream anymore. They moved the goalposts for you to be incredibly wealthy or else. There is no middle class. You are not going to make it if you're middle class.
Yeah, middle who? Nah.
What is that?
Yeah.
You're not even going to make it if you're upper middle class. What is that? It's either you're rich or you're poor.
Yeah.
And they've made all these people in the so-called middle class like think that they're somehow like on their way,
or they need to fight each other
on their way, so that they treat everybody that's on the bottom like shit because they haven't made it like a few zeros up on the fucking, like, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, it's literally about extra zeros at the end.
Yeah. Zeros that they're going to tax anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, it's just like, we can do everything that we can do on our end to help ourselves.
Yeah.
And I've told some of my friends who have also had mental health crises, we cannot control what other people do. You feel like your friends do not support you when you come out, and we can't control that. You feel like, you know, you people are against you. You can't control that.
Yeah.
You have to determine the value. That's the only shot that you have at surviving, is you determining your own value yourself and finding a way to make it. But it's not fair that that's what we have to settle for. So I think ultimately what we have to do is like what you're doing, having platforms, getting out there, talking about what the problem is, and actually going to being lobbyists, because there's lobbyists for everything. We need to be lobbyists for mental health resources.
Yeah. We
need to be lobbyists for an overhaul in the way that society treats people with mental illnesses. And we need to be lobbyists for destigmatize. I feel like we've moved from a place of stigmatizing into another space of stigmatizing. Now you have people that are diagnosing people on the internet, and then you have people when somebody commits a crime, the mental illness is real. That don't got shit to do with mental illness.
Yeah,
that is a societal problem.
That nigga was broke.
He was broke, or he didn't have no job, or he was resentful,
or denied jobs because of their past or their skin color. Or assumptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just, we have to really work, and it sucks that we have to do it. But if we want to live in a society where this isn't a problem, we have no choice.
Yeah.
We have no choice.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the people where you can be found, or do you not want to be bothered? Because either way is fine by me.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram, Jenna Camille SMG. So follow me there.
And do you have any tours or anything that's coming up, or is school and moving the focus right now?
School and moving is the focus.
Okay. Girl, you got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Well, you told me to move and everything. Well, you hit me up about Monday. I was like, nah, girl, you scheduled for Wednesday.
Oh.
You scheduled for Wednesday. You don't got to worry about it. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. All right, let me let you out in the meantime.
Okay.
Did you send me the link for the fundraiser?
I think I did. Let me just double check.
What I had for the microphone stuff.
Yeah, I did send it to you.
Okay. How much are you guys looking to make right now?
So we were looking to raise about 10,000. We raised.
So if you're about to pick a flower, I suggest that you keep this in mind. Happiness comes right from within, so take a breath and take your time now.